Baldur's Gate 3 feels like a game that's bursting at the seams. You finish it, and as brilliant as it is, you can't help but feel like something's missing. There's this buried version of the story, cut quests, lost zones, alternate endings that never saw the light of day. This video explores the pieces that were left behind, the content that was planned, partially built, even voiced, and how different Baldur's Gate 3 could have been. And this is just one part of what got left on the cutting room floor, because there's so much that we never saw. So if you're into Baldur's Gate 3 mods, news, and the stuff that most players miss, consider subscribing, because there's plenty more coming soon. So let's start with the massive elephant in the room, the Upper City. Larian showed off Baldur's Gate's posh Upper City before launch, suggested that it would be explorable, and even teased that it was packed with political factions and proper open world design, and then nothing. We see it in the final cutscenes, and that's pretty much it. But why does that matter? Because it gutted one of the most important storylines in the game, Karlach's ending. Her actual good ending, the one where her infernal engine gets fixed and she lives, was tied to the events in the Upper City. It was apparently fully written, fully voiced, and ready to go, but with that area removed, the endings we got in the end were more of a fallback version. What would have happened if you didn't help her in time? The only ending where she survives without returning to Avernus, where her engine is repaired and she lives a full life, ultimately got cut alongside the Upper City content. That version had her staying in Baldur's Gate, curse-free, engine fixed, an actual ending. Astarian's storyline shifted significantly too. Cazador, his former master, was meant to be this big political figure in the Upper City. He could have even been a faction leader you work with or against. That dynamic could have turned Astarian's arc from personal revenge into something far more politically charged, but with the Upper City gone, that whole subplot just fizzled out. And Withers, he was supposed to narrate a personalised epilogue, watching you across the entire journey and wrapping it up in a tailored voiceover based on your decisions in-game. Later, Larian admitted that they cut the epilogues down because they felt the ending was just getting too long, but they've since added a few of those back in post-launch. Then there's the Dreamworld stuff. Daisy in early access. She existed prominently in data mined files and cinematic assets. She was internally nicknamed Daisy, and she was a seductive dream visitor whose appearance, gender, and race were tailored by the player character and choices, often appearing in haunting riverside dream sequences accompanied by the track Down by the River. According to the data mined content from Early Access Patch 9, Daisy was meant to embody the seductive lure of the tadpole, offering an illusion of love and safety in exchange for surrender. And this then tied into a full alternate ending where the player could embrace the dream world, undergo ceremorphosis, and live in a blissful mental illusion while physically becoming a mind flayer. Cinematics and dialogue for this arc were scripted and partially implemented, but never accessible to the player. It was ultimately completely cut before full release. That concept was later then folded into the Guardian Emperor arc to streamline the Illithid narrative. That decision made narrative sense, but of course removed the surreal, abstract tone that Daisy's storyline would have brought. Speaking of different endings, Raphael had one too. According to data-mined dialogue and cut quest scripting, there was originally a full questline in which the player could bargain with Raphael in Act 3 to have the tadpole removed in exchange for their soul. This wasn't just a one-off conversation. He would have had his own shop in the House of Hope, where soul coins functioned as currency and players could use them to buy powerful infernal gear and potentially even buy their soul back if they'd already struck a deal. Essentially, Raphael was meant to be a fully viable endgame solution to the tadpole problem, a classic deal with the devil type path with major consequences. But of course, in the final game, that entire route is gone. Soul coins still exist, but they're only used to boost Karlach's engine or grant minor buffs during Raphael's boss fight. The hag storyline is another one. You meet Auntie Ethel in Act 1, and she's got letters from other hags hidden around her home. Originally, there was going to be a full trilogy, one hag per act, all leading up to their leader, Mother. But in the final game, that arc doesn't materialise. Ethel appears again briefly in Act 3 if she's alive, but the broader coven storyline was ultimately left behind. And then there's Orin. She originally had a red dragon. Data mine files specifically refer to a barlist red dragon, suggesting that Orin was meant to corrupt or control a dragon as part of her arc, and this would have likely led to a dramatic boss encounter at some point in Act 3. There was also a planned sequence in Act 2 where Orin's cultists were supposed to attack the Githyanki Githyanki Kresh, leading to a chaotic three-way battle between Tav, the Githyanki, and Baal's followers. In the final build, these events were completely cut. Even Bane, one of the Dead Three, was meant to have a larger presence. Gortash is his chosen, but originally Baneite cultists were going to appear as enemies in Act 3. Fully modelled armour, weapons, and encounter data exist for Baneite factions, but none of it made it into the final release version. Avernus was supposed to be a real zone too, not just a cutscene or a one-off background. According to data mined files and early concept material, Larian originally planned for a full explorable region set in Avernus, complete with infernal enemies, environmental hazards, and quest lines tied to Karlach and the Blood War. The area was intended to function similarly to the Underdark, an optional zone filled with high-level encounters and lore-heavy content. In particular, it was meant to expand on Karlach's story, offering a more detailed resolution for her character, especially if the player chose to return to Avernus with her. Soul coins were also supposed to serve a greater mechanical purpose in this region, used to power infernal devices, bargain with devils, or influence endings tied to the Hells. In the final game, Avernus remains more of a narrative backdrop than a playable location. Outside of the prologue and one or two ending cinematics, the player never sets foot there. And then there's the side quests. Remember Mole, the tiefling kid? If you hand over the Orphic hammer to Raphael, she gets taken to the House of Hope, but there's no follow-up. In the final game, she later reappears and casually claims she escaped, but data mine dialogue and quest flags suggest that this was originally meant to lead to a full-on rescue mission where you'd break into Raphael's realm again to save her. Data miners even uncovered an unused animation of Mole trapped in a cage within the House of Hope, reinforcing that a proper rescue sequence was at one point planned but never made it into the final game. Mystic Carrion's necromancy plot was originally intended to continue into a second act involving the Raven Queen. After the player finishes his Act 3 quest, there are no follow-ups in the final game, but unused files reference additional stages involving the Raven Queen. And Minsk, he was originally planned to show up way earlier, possibly as an origin character. According to the COC content and data mined files, dialogue tags suggest he could have been encountered as early as the end of Act 1, and his storyline may have initially included a much larger presence in the party before being reworked into a late Act 3 introduction. There was even entire lines of dialogue and companion banter that referenced quests that we never got. Data miners discovered fully voiced but unused lines where companions react to events or NPCs that don't actually appear in the final game, alternate character fates for Halsin or Shadowheart, and multiple references to the gnome village Angler Vled. Concept art from Larian even depicts this as a cliffside gnome setting along the river Chiontar, and in-game notes reference the Absolute's forces overrunning it. All signs point to this once being a visitable location, possibly between Acts 2 and 3, but ultimately it was cut. And this to me is what makes Baldur's Gate 3 so fascinating to revisit. It's a masterpiece, no doubt, but you can see the outlines of something even more ambitious underneath. Baldur's Gate 3 is a phenomenal game with more ideas than it could reasonably fit, and honestly, that's not a flaw, that's a sign of just how much heart and love went into it. Let me know which of these cut pieces of content you wish we got, or which ones you're glad they left out, and if you thought this was wild, wait until you see the changes that they made to companions. That video is coming next, so hit subscribe and don't miss it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.